Yes. Let me see you move.
Love never felt so good. And I died, they never could. Not like you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome aboard to Local Matters, where living local never felt so good. I'm Dottie Rimpsey. So I have somewhat of an odd question for you. Does lipstick on a pig have anything in common with a naked pig? We'll find out how one local community is thriving, and it has a lot to do with a naked pig. We'll find out why and how when we come back with more Local Matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome aboard to Local Matters, where living local never felt so good. I'm Dottie Rimpsey. You know, the rhetorical expression lipstick on a pig is used to convey the message that making superficial or cosmetic changes is a futile attempt to disguise the true nature of a product, or a person sometimes for that matter. But there's one local business owner who knows all too well that a naked pig is much more profitable than one with lipstick. So joining us to provide some perspective to that is Mr. Jason Wolfson of Back 40 Beer Company in Gaston. So welcome aboard, Local Matters.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have you aboard. You know, we talked about this lipstick on a pig and what that means. I just explained that. So tell me, does the product naked pig, does it have anything to do with the lipstick on it?
No, we're not trying to hide anything there. It's more of a reference to some of the thought behind the name of our brewery and our southern roots, and we've been in this part of the state for a long time. So it's really just I'm a sucker for a double entendre, so I like a good double meaning to anything.
Right,
so we have a lot of fun with the beer names.
Yeah, naked pig, and we're going to talk about that too a little bit later in the show. These different types of beer names, they're really quite exotic. I'll be telling you more about that. But this is not, I'm so glad that you're here this morning, because this is not your first run of really coming aboard, local talk shows and morning talk shows. I understand you've been around the country quite a bit talking about Back 40's products.
Sure, and not always just Back 40. I'm president of the Alabama Brewers Guild as well, so I call myself a beer evangelist. I talk about craft beer all over the place. But yeah, we've been in business going on 8 years now, so we've had a lot of fun working with local television stations all over the Southeast. We did a program and have continued to do it for the last several years called Beer Before Breakfast.
Wow,
where we focus. Well, believe it or not, it's not so much about drinking beer, but we have a lot of fun talking about the relationship between beer and food. And for that reason, we have a great relationship in the culinary world. And so what we would do is pair with local chefs that were friends of ours that we had met along the way, and we would come into their local markets and do a beer and food cooking segment on the morning shows. So yeah, we've done them all over Alabama and a few in Georgia and Florida and Mississippi. So it's just one of those fun things that you never expected as a small business owner that kind of just developed over time.
Wow, you know what, and that's a great idea. You're giving me a little bit of, I'm thinking here that maybe I could have you come back on Local Matters.
Sure.
To really, we can do a little bit of cooking here and have some beer and really talk about it. So now that we've kind of gotten that out the way, that you're really not a novice in terms of going around the country talking about the many products that you have at Back 40. What I did want to talk about, Jason, was this whole idea of you are from Gaston, you're a native, and you went off to Auburn, I understand.
Yeah, I graduated from Auburn in 2005, and I've been in Gadsden my family's been in Gadsden for over 5 generations. I grew up here in the Northeast part of the state, and it's been obviously a big part of who I am today. But like most kids from around here, when I left high school to go to college, I was never coming back.
Of course, me too. I was still going to live in Anniston. I was going to be in New York, California.
Yeah, sure. And I was lucky enough after college to get to travel with work and to go to some of those places and spend some time there. And as I got older, I kind of would come back and visit Gadsden and visit my family and extended family who are still there. And I just started to feel a stronger and stronger pull back to home.
Of course.
And I saw an energy kind of kind of bubbling up in this area, you know, some young entrepreneurs. We kind of lost a generation after, you know, some of the big manufacturing jobs left this area in the late 80s, early 90s. We kind of lost a generation of young people who left and didn't come back.
That's right.
And so over the years, I kind of started feeling, as I would come back to visit, I would feel this momentum and a little bit of an energy. And so when the time came for me to follow my passion, which was small business ownership and entrepreneurship and eventually craft beer, when it came time to decide where we were going to build the facility, I mean, Gadsden was a natural selection for me. And just because this, like I said, this part of the state has been so much of what's made me who I am today. So, I mean, it just made sense.
It made sense for you to want to come back and give back to the community. You know, and I would imagine that wasn't easy for you, because it's not like you could have just picked up the phone and said, hey, you know, I really want to just build a brewery here. And they said, sure, come on out, we got a spot for you.
Sure.
You know, just come on down.
It was a little challenging, to say the least. I mean, at the time, you know, there had been a couple of brew pubs in Alabama that had gone out of business just because some terribly restrictive laws that didn't really allow them to pursue a business model. They kind of had to operate with one hand tied behind their back, and that's tough to do as a small business owner. And so there weren't really any operating breweries. Good People Brewery in Birmingham had been open for about a year or so, I think, and they were brewing draft beer on a really small system at the time. Of course, they've grown to be a great brand here in the state. But you know, so when we started, there were no other packaging breweries in the state of Alabama. There was nobody making beer and bottling beer in Alabama, and so it was a daunting task, to say the least. I mean, my first conversation with the banker in 2008, in the middle of the economic collapse, when I told him I was a first-time entrepreneur that wanted to build a brewery in a state that didn't have any, and in some counties it wasn't even legal. That was a short conversation with the bank that first time around. But you know, when you're an entrepreneur and you're passionate about something, you don't take no for an answer.
And you don't give up.
Yeah, and so I ended up finding a brewery in Mississippi who agreed to brew the beer for us, essentially leave the key under the mat for us. And so at one point I was living in Atlanta, brewing beer in southern Mississippi and selling it in Alabama.
And you were doing whatever it took.
Yeah, I would drive on the weekends, the long drive down to Kiln, Mississippi, and brew beer all weekend and clean up before they started their production schedule back on Monday morning.
And then just come on back.
Yeah, and then I would drive Sunday night, overnight, or through the night to get back to Atlanta. So I kept my full-time job. We did that for a year and a half.
Right. Well, you know what? We've got to go to break, Jason. When we come back, we are going to be talking more about this, you know, everything that you had to do to make your dream come true, because you were even working at a corporate company.
Yeah.
And you realized that just wasn't going to cut it for you. So we'll be back with more Back 40. We'll be right back with that. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Local Matters. I'm Dottie Rimsey, where living local never felt so good. And it never felt so good to be sitting here with Mr. Jason Wilson. He is the founder and CEO of Back 40 Beer Company. It's located in Gadsden, Alabama. And we've been talking about Jason's path to beer brewing, and it really hasn't been an easy one. And so, Jason, I want to pick up where we left off in our first half, because you mentioned that when you began the business, when you first began the business, that it certainly wasn't a place marked for you to start a brewing company. So let's go back. You had to say, okay, so it's not a place here in Alabama for me to do that. So where do you go from there?
Well, like I said, I mean, I grew up in what I thought was an upper middle class family, and you know, after going to Auburn, I kind of realized I was a little closer to the poverty line than I thought I was. But yeah, so I didn't have the money to build a production brewing facility, so that's when I reached out to another brewery, several other breweries actually around the country, and I finally found one in southern Mississippi. Leslie and Mark Henderson, the owners of Lazy Magnolia Brewery down in Kiln, Mississippi, were nice enough to agree to to let us share the space with them for a while. And so for a year and a half, I was working a full-time corporate job in Atlanta, brewing beer in Mississippi on the weekends at a loaned out facility, and then spending the rest of my free time trying to meet with distributors and bars and restaurant owners and talk to them about craft beer and just educate them about the concept. So we did that for a year and a half before we finally were able to build our facility in Gadsden and bring all that production back home. So yeah, it was pretty hectic there for a while, and it still is, but it's what I love to do. So.
And see, here's the thing, you were very comfortable. You mentioned you were at a corporate company, I believe it was Georgia Pacific, what I understand.
Yeah.
You were at Georgia Pacific, and I would imagine that's a pretty good company. And most people, when they're at a company like that, will sit back behind the desk with their suit and tie on and say, well, you know what? I'll make my dream happen one day. I'm making good money and I'm just going to, do this for a while. But there you were. I understand one day you were on the phone talking, while you were at Georgia Pacific. You should have been doing Georgia Pacific work, and you were on the phone talking about your business, your dream, your vision. You were doing that.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that story, because I like that.
It's funny. I just, craft beer was something that I got introduced to a little earlier in my college career. My brother lived in Colorado, and so I would go out and crash on the couch with him, and I was introduced to the craft beer concept years ago, and it always was something that was in the back of my head, and I didn't realize until one of the CEOs or one of the chief executives there at Georgia Pacific drew my attention to the fact that I use brewery concepts in a lot of my explanations at the office, and he finally challenged me to tell him how many brewery tours I'd been on, and it's the first time I'd ever counted them all up, and it was well over 200 at that point.
Wow.
And he said, maybe this is a little more than a hobby for you, Jason. This could be a passion. And so I really started thinking about it, and I thought, I've got a wonderful work ethic that my parents instilled in me. I don't mind working 12, 14-hour days. And it just started to wear on me, this idea that, if I'm going to work this hard, if I'm going to put this much passion into whatever I do, it might as well be something that I benefit from and that my local community can benefit from.
Yes.
And right now I'm young and I can do that. I wasn't married at the time. I didn't have children. I was, I had some discretionary income, and that's when you really have the opportunity to take a leap in life.
Yes.
And so I strapped down for well over a year and a half, and I saved my money and paid off my credit cards and did all the things that you have to do to, because it's such a big challenge to go from the uncertainty of entrepreneurship.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
That steady paycheck to the uncertainty of entrepreneurship.
Of course it is. I know all too well. It's so easy. It is. It's a luxury.
It is.
And sometimes even it's not even sometimes the amount of the paycheck, but the consistency.
Exactly.
Of it. It means a lot that you've got something coming in every other week, or every week you've got it coming in, as opposed to just hoping that, okay, I really hope this deal goes through.
Sure.
And something will come up for me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You'll never be able to eliminate that uncertainty completely as an entrepreneur, but there are a lot of things you can do to make it not quite so dramatic. You can start making, small revenue streams while you continue your corporate job. Yes. Try to diversify your income. Try to find 3 or 4 sources of income so that it's not much of a dramatic shift when you do make that shift to a full-time self-employed entrepreneur.
Is that what you did? Because did you kind of diversify? Because at some point you actually left Georgia Pacific.
I did. I was fortunate in that during the economic downturn, I didn't lose my job. And so for me, this was a little different because I wasn't thrust into it and forced to come up with a new form of income. This is something I had time, to plan out and develop.
Steady the course, right.
Yeah, so I remember receiving pallet loads of pint glasses and T-shirts to my apartment, my second-story apartment in Midtown Atlanta, and the FedEx driver having to help me lug them up 2 flights of stairs. So yeah, I was selling T-shirts and pint glasses and hats off of our website out of my apartment, shipping them, walking around the corner every day on my lunch break to the UPS store to send out the shipments. So yeah, and that got a little bit of revenue coming in, and actually I wasn't even the first employee for Back 40 Beer Company. I hired my best friend from college to lead our sales team before I even left Georgia Pacific. In fact, I didn't get to leave Atlanta and come back to Gadsden until I think we had 3 or 4 employees before I became
Before you
a
really-
staff member. Yeah, so I worked my full-time job for several years before I was able to make the leap.
Wow, and that's, you know what, that's what I wanted to talk about when we come back, because we've got to go to break now. I want to talk now where we are today, where you are today with Back 40 Beer. It's a huge company. You've got products on the shelves, even in Walmart. So we'll be right back with more Local Matters. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Local Matters, where living local never felt so good. I'm Dottie Rimpsey, and I'm joined with Mr. Jason Wilson, and he is here with me. He is here from Back 40 Beer Company in Gadsden, and he has really been talking about what it takes to really build a dynamic force, and he's done that. So I want to go back again, because your story has just been so interesting to me. The fact that you really believed in, you had a passion and you went for it. You didn't have a lot of money. It wasn't a place set out for you to do a brewing company in Alabama. You had a few friends, and you probably had a lot of associates, but you had that one true friend that's kind of stuck there with you, because that's what you really need too.
Yeah.
So let's go back. Now you're in Atlanta. You were working at Georgia Pacific. You talked about that. You're still building your company. You've got your one friend. He's kind of on the payroll.
Yeah.
And then along the line, you mentioned you hired 2 or 3. So you're still in Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm still in Atlanta. So my friend Trip Collins, my best friend, took over kind of as our sales and operations director. He's now my chief operating officer. Then we hired our a brewmaster that we had gotten to know along the way, who was very talented and won several awards all over the country, a couple of World Beer Cup awards actually, so really all over the world. He was very well known and retired at the time, and I talked him out of retirement to come help us get started. And then I hired my brother to help with our marketing programs. And so at the time,
talk about the support system.
Yeah, and so at the time, all of those guys were in Gadsden at the facility working to get it ready for production. We were waiting on our bulk manufacturing equipment to come in, our bottling lines, our brew house, and all that stuff. Still brewing beer in Mississippi, trying to build a facility in Gadsden, and I was still working in Atlanta. So those guys are really the ones who made it happen.
Wow. And so now you are in Gadsden. I just want everyone to understand that you are now in Gadsden.
Yeah, I've been here back in Gadsden since 2011 now. So I've been back almost 5 years.
And we opened the show up. We talked about the Naked Pig. Was that the first beer?
That was the very first beer,
That was the very first one, the Naked Pig. What are some of the other name of the beers now that you have?
So about a year later, after Naked Pig, we released Truck Stop Honey, which is
Truck Stop Honey.
Yeah. So that's an English style brown ale that we won a beer award for at the Great American Beer Festival in Colorado. It's a beer that we brew with local honey. So that's really why we called it Truck Stop Honey, is because we used to buy it locally from the same guy that you see who fills those little honey bears at the truck stops and gas stations.
What about Freckle Belly?
But my marketing director told me there's another term for Truck Stop Honey in the Deep South.
That's where I was going, Truck Stop Honey.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then it turned into a thing. I'm a sucker for a double entendre. Like I said, I like multiple meanings. So then we decided just to start having fun with it, and that's where you get to Freckle Belly IPA. Freckle Belly just sounds southern, but it's actually fish that's native to the Cahaba River. A little trout, little ugly fish actually, but it's a great name. And then Paw Paw's Peach Wheat.
Paw Paw's who?
Paw Paw's Peach Wheat. That's a peach beer that we brew with local peaches. And then we do a Trade Day Cuban Coffee Stout. So if anybody's from the Northeast Alabama, they understand what Trade Day is and what an institution, a cultural institution it is here. So
where can people find your beer? Where can people find your beer? Because you know what? I got to say, one of the things about working as a reporter and an anchor and a talk show host, you get to meet some amazing people, and you get to do a lot of different tours. I was able to tour your facility beautiful.
Thank you
wonderful.
very much.
And then I also got a 6-pack. I went home and it was so good.
Yeah.
The beer is just wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
well, thank you very much.
good.
I have a staff of 24 very, very talented people who make sure that beer tastes as good as you say it does.
It does.
And
I
they've
like a
also
dark ale, Bill. I like a dark ale.
yeah. So they've done a lot. They've done a great job of getting us out there. Like I said, we've been at this about 7 or 8 years now. So I mean, we have thousands of retail locations throughout Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Florida, Tennessee.
Wow.
Major retailers: Target, Publix, Walmart. Several local retailers, Piggly Wiggly, of course, as you know, pretty much anywhere that you would expect to find it. And if you don't see it on the shelf there, you can always ask for it. You can always ask them to have it. All retailers have access to it. You just have to ask, and they'll be more than happy to stock it for you. So, and this year I'm excited. We just reached out and made our first shipments to Canada, and next month we'll make our first container load shipments of beer to China.
Wow.
So if you happen to be in China traveling this summer, you can get a little taste of home.
You go there from the story you shared with us just briefly. We don't have a lot of time.
Sure.
Where you were just a few years ago to where you are now. It's just absolutely amazing.
Well, thank you very
Gadsden
much.
is actually, it is a blessing that you decided that you say, you know what, I want to come back home.
Yeah,
and when
that
you
was
came,
really
and when you
important.
came back, you didn't have all of this. But oh my gosh, where you are now. So what other things are you guys involved in, quickly before we wrap it up, for the community? I understand you do a lot for the community there. You involved with some
Oh, sure.
fundraising.
I used to keep up with how much money we've given to local charities, but the bottom line is every time I would think about it, the answer is always the same, and it's not enough. You know, we haven't given enough. And so
Stop right there. Stop right there. I just want to say that. I want you to say that again. You haven't given enough. I think I just put something out on my Facebook page just earlier this morning. When you give.
Yes.
Get, give.
Yes. And I mean, it's obvious you have a responsibility, as any business has a responsibility to the community that they thrive in. But for craft beer and small breweries, and for me personally at Back 40, I mean, that is a core part of our culture there, is supporting the community that we grew up in. And, you know, I allow all of my employees to volunteer their time, and they're still paid by Back 40 for those hours if they volunteer in the community. I serve on multiple boards, charitable organizations in the community. I mean, and I encourage my staff to do the same thing. So, I mean, we are a 100% participant in the United Way giving program. So every single employee in our building supports in some way the United Way. So it's something that we found that if people are volunteering their time and they're doing great things in the community, they're happier, they're more productive, and it's the right thing to do. So if more businesses did that, I mean, imagine what we could accomplish as a community.
Well, you know what? I am so glad I had a wonderful opportunity to meet you.
Thank you for having me.
I am so glad that we do this show. I am so glad that we have a community that cares about this show and cares about what happens in our community. Because you know what? At the end of the day, local matters. See you later.